So let's move on now to look at orthopaedic care. And we're joined by Philip Henman, who's an orthopaedic and trauma surgery specialist at Newcastle upon Tyne Hospitals, and Kirsty Ohly, who's a patient expert.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. We're going to tag team on this, or Cox and Box. So Kirsty and I decided, out of all we could talk about in orthopaedics, was to really focus on fracture management. The reason for that is, I think it should be obvious, is that for the patient, for families, and for the clinician, for the whole medical team, this is where we have least control. Now, I do appreciate that there are orthopaedic, as in elective, arranged orthopaedic issues as well. I'm around for the next couple of days. Talk to me at question time or in coffee or whatever. But we're going to focus on fracture management. I was very privileged to be asked to join, to create a working group. We put together a national group of specialists and patient advocates, and we'll talk about that as we go through. So I'm going to start by just going over some basic principles about orthopaedic management. Kirsty is going to have a tub-thumping, rabble-rousing speech about parent advocacy, and then I'll talk a bit about orthopaedic specifics at the end. This is going to be a quick tutorial on the basics of fracture management, all right? By the end of this session, you're going to know at least as much as my trainees. You're going to be way more useful, and almost certainly you're not going to go on strike. You'll be impressed by the illustrations. They were put together by the illustration department of the Department of Imaginary Orthopaedics at Newcastle. So it starts like this. So what you're going to see, this is absolutely the basics of fracture management, and I'm going to go through this because I think people expect people to do this or that, and it's just not that simple. There's a lot of variety, and that doesn't help you because you will get different opinions, but I hope this will just illustrate why. For any fracture, we can think about, it's good, isn't it? We can think about three domains. Alignment. Is it pointing in the right direction? Or if it isn't pointing in the right direction, does that matter? And in children, that is interesting, but children, as they grow, they can straighten up, so you need a little bit of knowledge about that. Second domain is stability. Okay, so it's pointing in the right direction now. Will it stay in that position and enable the child or the patient to function, to use their limb? Or do we need to do something to make it more stable? Put a plaster on the outside, operate on the inside. The third domain is the one that we neglect but is critically important in Duchenne, rehabilitation. Is it pointing in the right direction so that the limb will function? Is it stable enough for that to heal and function? But critically, can this patient get up and start moving? Or do they need to spend a few weeks in bed on traction until the fracture is healed? That may be all right for some people. It's not all right for others, including kids with Duchenne. Here's an example. Here's a wrist fracture. Doesn't look broken. But I promise you, this kid fell off a bicycle. There's a little bump there. What it's done is something that happens in children where the bone doesn't shatter, it bends. It bends into a new shape, and then it stops bending. So that is entirely stable. And if we go back to our domains, is it pointing in the right direction? Yep. Is it stable? Absolutely. You could waggle that around. It'll be sore, but it wouldn't fall apart. Can they rehabilitate? Yes. When? Now. No plaster, no treatment, that is stable, you can get going. This is a sort of injury that we see in boys with Duchenne. Here's another one. That's definitely broken. But just putting that in a sling, after a week, you can probably not see that, but after a week that has started to heal with no intervention, no surgery, no anesthetic. But it's sore, that person needs painkillers. 6 weeks later, it's beginning to heal, but the function is good enough that he's back playing rugby. We didn't want him to play rugby, he's playing rugby. 6 months later, look at that. Now, that is amazing, isn't it? But unless you have seen that happening, you might believe that that first fracture needed more treatment. That's the point. What about this one, though? Whoa. Okay. I know. Thank you very much. It's broken. It's bent. It's not in the right alignment. That needs to be realigned, otherwise it won't be a useful leg. Or even in a child who's going to grow straight, it might not grow straight, but it will take years to do it even if it does so. Okay, so how are we going to stabilize it? Well, we could put that child on traction. You know, the old-fashioned thing, you see it on cartoons, the strings everywhere. Lie them in bed for 4 weeks, and then it will have healed enough that they can get up in a plaster. Fine for some kids, not if you have Duchenne, in which case we need, in order for them to rehabilitate, it needs to be realigned and it needs to be stabilized in order to allow rehabilitation to take part. That's when fixation comes in. Not for every fracture, but in an unstable long bone fracture. So why is this a problem in Duchenne? You all know we have osteoporosis, relative immobility, the muscle weakness and contractures make it more likely that the patient is going to fall, and the specific risks to rehabilitation. That's not a situation that you expect to see in a child. But the orthopaedic community actually see this all the time. It's our bread and butter. Elderly, frail, infirm people fall and have fractures, and they have all these issues, and we know how to treat them. We've got national guidelines. So here are just some of the national guidelines on managing the frail orthopaedic trauma patient. Effective pain management. We heard horror stories this morning about pain management being withdrawn or withheld. You can give regional blocks. Legs can be numbed. It can be done in the emergency department. It can be done within hours of patients coming in. Very effective, drug-free pain relief. Multidisciplinary care. A whole team around the patient, not just the surgeon. And I've lifted the next one. This is straight out of this publication that all orthopedic surgeons know about. Just look at it, I won't go through it, but very, very quickly get the patient back on their feet by whatever means necessary. Not necessarily an operation, but on their feet. A robust network. If it's a complex fracture, and all these are in Duchenne, then phone a friend who's dealt with it before. Don't try and manage it on your own. And then planned discharge and rehabilitation moving into the community. So it's all there. It's all there already. Orthopedics know it. It's just when they see a child, their brain doesn't click into that program. So you guys need to know that, and you can signpost them to what they know already. Kirsty, it's counting down.
Oh, okay.
That number there. Oh no, God, sorry.
Just making things worse. Hi, sorry. My name's Kirsty Ohly. I'm a mum of 2 boys with Duchenne, but also in a past life I was an orthopaedic theatre nurse and worked in orthopaedic research as well. So I have kind of 2 hats, I guess. So what I wanted to talk about today was empowering parents and families to advocate for their children in the event of a fracture. So when a fracture means more, and as we know, for most children, a fracture heals, but for boys with Duchenne, it can change everything for them. So why fractures matter? So a fracture is not just a broken bone. For our boys, there's a risk of loss of ambulation, rapid loss of strength, and a loss of independence. So where can care fall short? So not everybody and not every hospital sees Duchenne. We know there's so many health professionals out there, but Duchenne is a rare disease and they can't possibly know everything about everything. So obviously, as you would expect in major trauma centres, they have the most experience, and so they're able to manage these fractures. But if you're in a local hospital with limited exposure, decisions are being made in an emergency, and they may not be the correct decisions for your child. And unfortunately, as we know, most of these fractures don't happen near a major trauma centre. They happen locally, or they happen in the airport on the way to your holiday. So this is where parents and patients matter. As a parent, speaking up, it isn't confrontation, it's protection for your child. You're not being difficult.
You are essential. You are the expert. We have this horrible diagnosis for our children, but nobody knows your child like you do. You know their baseline mobility, you know how quickly strength is lost, and what immobility does to them. You bring knowledge into the room that no textbook can. So I've been involved in this with Philip and lots of other people, setting up these orthopaedic guidelines, and they're essential for families and clinicians. They give clear Duchenne-specific guidance, and they support better decision-making. So the goal, the priority isn't just bone healing, it's protecting the boy's function. What we want to do is stabilise the fracture, because we want to enable them to weight bear immediately and keep them on their feet for as long as possible. Physiotherapy can't wait. Early intervention is critical, and we have some fantastic neuromuscular physios that know our boys, they know their function, and we want to prevent rapid deconditioning and support safe weight bearing. So be prepared. What can we do as a parent with Duchenne? So know who to contact. Contact your neuromuscular team. They know your child. Make use of the guidelines. You have emergency care patient leaflets, and also the specific orthopaedic guidelines. And then we did have the ISAP, which has been very helpful for me in the past, which, as Emily spoke about, will be turning into DMD Connect and will be part of that. So preparation protects your child when stress is high. So just a final message. I know it can be hard to not stand up to a medical professional, but we respect what their advice is. But sometimes advocating it's not challenging doctors. It's actually standing up for your child's future. And a fracture doesn't have to mean the end of walking, but sometimes silence can. So we need to advocate for our children and ask questions. And if you don't agree, it's okay to ask and challenge and show consultants these guidelines, because sometimes they're just relieved to have something to look at and be able to work with.
Did you bring the cinnamon rolls?
Oh, sorry, yeah, that's fine.
So, I am a big advocate for surgical fixation in the right cases, but I think it's very useful to look at our own results. This was a retrospective, it's not real science. I'm always intimidated by real scientists, but this is just as a review, which it shows what we thought we knew, mainly femur fractures in our area. We are in an area where there's been a lot of steroid use, so it's a very different pattern in different places. But here are some of the things that came as a surprise. Out of this big group of patients, only 6 had an operation, so that's good. It does show you that we're managing most of them non-operatively, but by different means. But actually, what came as a shock to me was I thought, being self-centered, that I was seeing most of these kids, and actually most of them were staying out in the district hospitals. We weren't seeing them at all in the centre. And that's a shock, and that is something we can change. At least we should be knowing about these kids, where the expertise is. 2 of them didn't have physiotherapists, and a surprising, or perhaps you have to acknowledge that a good number of these kids didn't walk after their injury, and that again is something I am sure we can do better at. I just wanted to show you this. This is an emergency cast. This is a back slab, plaster of Paris back slab. It's basically like having a lump of limestone loosely wrapped onto your leg. So almost certainly, if you break your ankle at any age, but especially with a Duchenne kid, you will be put in a back slab. Now that is fine overnight or for 24 hours or so. It is absolutely useless and counterproductive for any longer after that. It's heavy, it's not supportive, it needs to be changed to something else. Either it needs to be fixed or a different cast. So this is a lightweight cast made out of a plastic or some sort of synthetic material which sets immediately. You can fully weight bear through it immediately. And that is what the child should be in within a very short period of time, certainly within that 36-hour window. More fun is operating, obviously. We often see people saying, well, that's not bad alignment, and that's going to straighten up with time. Excuse me. I'll be quick. It's going to straighten up with time, but actually that's no good, because that is angled. It has thrown the mechanical access off. When you are frail and the muscles are weak, you need an absolutely straight bone, and it needs to be stable. That is not acceptable. Something better needs to be done. The other thing I'll quickly show you, and this again is straight out of the playbook for management of frailty fractures, is that you protect the whole bone, not just the broken bit. That's called holistic orthopedics. Treat the whole bone, not just the whole bone, not just the patient. No, anyway, I'll move on. In an older child, you can do something even more dramatic. This is genuinely bolting the leg together, and you can get straight up and walk on that. That's very strong fixation, but again, involving the whole of the bone. There are other techniques. This is just ortho stuff. My point being that we have the techniques to treat these boys effectively, and this should be done. And it's not just the lower limb. Your upper limbs are important for ambulatory. If you're using crutches, if you're using a wheelchair, even if it's just the controls on your wheelchair, you need to have a stable arm pointing in the right direction, and we can do that. So the challenges that we see and why this is difficult is that when clinicians are faced by an unfamiliar diagnosis, they freeze. They don't get it. We're not giving pain relief. What the heck? I mean, it's just... And that is because people are afraid of doing the wrong thing. They abandon the principles that they'd apply in the same situation somewhere else. They don't understand that conservative treatment, i.e. non-operative treatment, can be aggressive and early. Communications are poor. There are people like myself all around the country who are just dying to hear, Michaela doesn't care. She phones me up when I'm trying to go to bed or cling to a rock surface or lie down on a beach. Why should you? Get hold of us. Yeah, I know, you will. Ask for help. We need to encourage clinicians to acknowledge their own uncertainties. So here are the guidelines. I'm very keen to see that we put that number one, and that's all I've heard today. Is inadequate pain relief. It's absolutely the key thing, and contact a friend. Now, if those two things are done, everybody immediately feels happier. The parents, the clinicians, the whole team, because you're comfortable and you've got help. Then, of course, the adrenal insufficiency, and then the specific anesthetic and surgical considerations. They're all written down in the guidelines, which you will have. So, in summary, as boys early on, I know you're worried about what management you're going to have and the specifics, but as kids get older and get into their teens, this becomes a growing concern. We need your help to advocate. We really do, because as has been said before, these are rare conditions, and the guidelines are a tool for change. Combine the guidelines and Martha's Law, you've got a lot of power. We've written the guidelines. We think they're fantastic. Of course we do. We absolutely, this is stage one. There will be an iterative process. We're going to develop them over time. So please, please, please feedback, and we will change them as you wish. Thank you very much.